Here, let's start talking about population and one-child policy in China. Okay, and let's first take a look at the evolution of China's population. We're gonna take a look at from 1800 to 2100. Okay, so over the course of the 300 years, right? And as you could say, in the entire 19th century, China's population was much larger than India's and other major economies shown here in the figure. Okay, and the estimation is there was China's population accounted for about 1/4 of the world's population. Okay. But you can also see that here in the 19th century, because of many factors like malnutrition, civil wars, the Chinese population was basically under check. Okay, so there was no explosive growth. Okay, and in early 20th century, we found that Chinese population start, taking off, okay, but in a moderate way. And again, this is because of the World War II and Civil War and famines, these factors, okay. And in 1949, right after the Communist Party took over China and established the People's Republic of China. So China had a peaceful time for its population to grow, and as you can see, it really took off in an explosive way. Okay, and very quickly its population grows from under 600 million to over 1.2 billion. Okay, and basically, from 1950s to 1980s, the growth rate of China's population was pretty high. Okay? And then after 1980s, it slowed down a little bit. Okay? And its population, based upon the estimation, will peak around 2040. And after that, it will start shrinking. Okay? You can also find here on this chart that India's population had a similar trend like China, okay, and experienced explosive growth again in the second half of 20th century. Okay. Compared to these two, you find that U.S. population growth is much smoother, okay, and continue to go up throughout the whole period of time. And when we look at Japan here, Japan's population already shrunk since from the year 2000. Okay, in other words, Japan is really ahead of other major economies here, okay, in terms of the decline in population. All right. Now, to better understand the change in population, we have to discuss the demographic transition. Okay? And here, what you find is a general model. So, demographic scientists divided this transition into 5 stages. Okay. However, most of the time you would find us just discuss stage 2, 3, and 4 because these are the stages when we see substantial change. Okay, stage 1 and stage 5 are both relatively stable. Okay, so here you find that in stage 1, birth rate and death rate are both high. Okay, and In stage 2, we find that birth rate is still high, but death rate falls rapidly. Now, this is usually caused by economic development, okay? Especially the improvement of the living conditions, such as more food available, better nutrition, and sanitation, okay, access to clean water, and better health treatment, medical treatment. So we find that death rate declined substantially. Okay. However, the birth rate is still high because people still used to have many kids. Okay, and in some cases, because of the improvement of living conditions, we can even see the birth rate of some countries increase. Okay, in stage 2. All right, now from stage 2 to stage 3, you find that the death rate continued to decline and to a relatively stable level. Okay, and the birth rate start declining. Okay, this is the most important feature for stage 3. Okay, so at this stage, people find that because the death rate is low, so the infant mortality rate is low as well. In other words, it's less likely that the newborn babies will die before they grow up. Okay, so people find that they don't need to have that many newborns. Okay, so the birth rate start declining very quickly. All right, and so during the third stage, you would find that the total population continue to go up, but at a slower rate, okay, compared to stage 2. Stage 2 is really the explosive growth, okay, of the total population. Now, from stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4, we find that death rate again already reached a pretty low level, and the birth rate continued to decline to a quite low level, okay, or a level which is very close to the death rate. Okay, in other words, then what we call the replacement level. Okay, in other words, the number of new borns would be approximately equal to number of deaths per year. Okay, so in this stage, we find both birth and death rates are low. Okay, and so this is just a general model for demographic transition, okay, to help us better understand the evolution of total population. Okay. Now, here let's take a look at the evidence from China, or let's apply the general model to China's situation. Okay. Here, what we find is, this figure shows the birth rate and death rate for China between 1950s and 2015. Okay. Now, you find that here the between 1958 to 1962, these 4 years are called Great Leap Forward. Now, Great Leap Forward is the political campaign run by the Communist Party of China, more specifically by Chairman Mao. Okay, and back then, the Communist Party, under the leadership of Chairman Mao, believed that they could achieve very fast industrialization within an extremely short period of time. And somehow they got that wrong idea in their mind. Okay, and so they encouraged Chinese people to produce a lot of industrial products, such as steel, okay, and other heavy industrial equipments. Okay, and the political campaign was extremely successful in terms of um, like um, push people to leave their original positions. Okay, for example, the farmers. Many farmers left their agricultural fields and start, making steel. Okay, and you probably want to know how they could do that. Again, they just, build a very um, uh, like the steel, like the stoves. Okay, and through all of this, iron made stuff like their pots, their pans, the kitchenwares into the stoves and trying to produce steel. And as you could imagine, that was a huge failure. Okay, and because the farmers left their fields and the workers left their positions in the factory, so even though they produced a lot, but these products were basically useless. Okay? And so there's a huge uh, waste of productive resources, which eventually led to a great famine, one of the greatest famine in human history. Based upon the Chinese government's statistical yearbook, during these 4 years, there were approximately 30 million Chinese people died, okay, because of the starvation and famine. Right, and that's why here you saw the death rate, the green curve, spikes during these years, and the birth rate plummet. Okay, um, if we put the Great Leap Forward aside, because these are just kind of the outliers, right? Kind of the radical situation here, and we just look at the general trend, you would find that here the death rate after the establishment of the People's Republic of China continued to decline again, except these years, okay, and eventually settled at a relatively low level in 1980s. In other words, here we are talking about probably from 1950s to mid 1960s. Okay, these are the stage two we just discussed. Okay, when we saw a significant reduced death rate, and the birth rate in China during that period actually increased. Again, if we skip these Great Leap Forward years, okay, it dipped a little bit and then start climbing up. Okay, so in mid 1960s, the birth rate reached about 43, 45 um, uh, per birth for every 1,000 people. Okay, and then it started decreasing very quickly. Okay, so from mid 1960s to 1980s, this is probably China's stage number three. Okay, when the death rate decreased in a very modest way, and the birth rate decreased in a very dramatic way. Okay, and then from 1980s to 2015, shown here, that's under one-child policy, you find that death rate already settled at a quite low level, and the birth rate, increased a little bit at the beginning, and then start declining. Okay, so these would be stage number four for China. All right. Now here, after we go through this evolution of China's population in recent history or centuries, we're gonna narrowly focused upon China's population policies after 1950s, especially one-child policy. Okay, because I believe this is one of the most controversial policies in China. Okay, I mean debated in the Western society. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do in class.